So if you are a language learner who loves to stick to only one language at a time before moving on to the next language, I totally understand you because I used to be like that. Because I thought that dabbling would actually mess up all of my progress, make me mix up languages, etc. I have found that dabbling actually makes me not only learn faster, but become a better language learner. So in this video, I'll explain why I love language dabbling now, even after 8 years of learning languages but having never dabbled. Plus, here I'll also advocate for why it is one of the absolute best things you could be doing. So what is language dabbling exactly? Well, you're basically just in a situationship with a language. So there's absolutely no commitment to the language in terms of wanting to get fluent in it. You are learning it in a very casual way, maybe even just learning the basics, maybe reading about it, reading a little bit about the culture, but you're not stuck to a certain timeline for what you want to achieve in the language necessarily. Now, here are some of the biggest benefits I've noticed that have helped me learn my main languages faster. Dabbling is absolutely phenomenal for your long-term memory. You can draw even more connections between words, grammar systems, phrases, even cultures and cultural contexts. In general, it's great for our memory when we can make words, phrases relevant and personalized to us. And dabbling in multiple languages without commitment exposes me to so many ways that ideas can be formed. And I found that when I dabble in different languages, inevitably they help me review what I already know about my main focus languages without it all necessarily feeling like a sit-down review session. Now, for example, before I used to be very scared about studying any Asian language, but once I started dabbling in Korean, I started to notice that vowel harmony also exists, just like it does in one of my main languages, Turkish. The word order of Korean is also very similar to how word order is in Turkish. Once I started to dabble a little bit in Farsi, I already knew about the historical significance and connections in between Arabic, Farsi, and Turkish. And I'm no longer surprised or intimidated when there is definitely more than one word in each of these languages to describe what we only have one word for in English. For example, Turkish has 3 words for heart: the Arabic, Farsi, and original Turkish word. And by seeing and recognizing these subtle or big differences and similarities between each language, I reinforce my understanding of my main language or focus languages. Now, what is another benefit of dabbling? Well, it is a great use of your time, of your energy. I used to think dabbling was actually a waste of time. Like, I would literally cover my ears at the dinner table if there was someone who spoke another language that was different than mine, because I was so convinced that I would not make progress in my main languages if I knew anything else about another language outside of what I was focusing on. I used to see fluency as this holy grail that actually halted and stopped my curiosity, which is an essential ingredient for keeping motivation high in language learning. So I was actually doing a disservice to myself in thinking this way. But the reality is, you are never going to know what language is going to play what role in your life in the future. And who knows, it might even come in handy. For example, when I dabbled in Korean last year, I thought, there's no way that I'm going to South Korea. And there aren't any South Koreans, or barely any that I know of, who are living where I was living back then in the United States. But even just this year, when I booked a tour to visit Cappadocia in Turkey, there was a South Korean man who didn't have very good English. And even though my Korean was worse than his English, I could still make a really meaningful connection by using what little Korean I knew. And after dabbling a little bit in Polish, I found that during my volunteer program that I was in Malta for this year really helped me form a deeper connection with the kids that I was volunteering with, because they knew that they could teach an adult a lot more about their language and culture, and they felt empowered by that. And I also felt more connected to them because I was learning their language. So dabbling, truly never a waste. Another great benefit, it made me realize that learning multiple languages isn't intimidating to do. Now, I used to get very overwhelmed about thinking of like 8, 9 plans that I needed to make to reach my goals in like 8, 9 languages. But again, after dabbling in several languages alongside my maintenance and my main focus languages this and last year, it just seemed pretty natural to have different resources that I was working on at the same time for different languages, while also maintaining any sorts of apps or programs I was using for my dabbling languages on the side. And after dabbling, it made organizing plans for multiple languages with very different goals on very different timelines a lot less stressful of a process, which you can also see embodied in this video where I decided to refresh 4 languages at the same time. Another great benefit that I personally love dabbling for is taking a break. And what I mean by this is I have sometimes lost motivation for maintaining my languages, or I feel bored hard just interacting with the languages that I already know to an advanced level. Now, it's not always like this, but it does happen because we are human. We have varying degrees of energy levels throughout our language learning journey. And honestly, nothing gets me really more excited than being in the beginner phase, the honeymoon phase, I like to call it, where you're learning a lot of phrases really, really fast. You progress really fast, and you get to learn about a whole new culture. And whereas my curiosity, my motivation was maybe lower for my maintenance and main focus languages, when I start to dabble, I can maintain that same level of curiosity with other languages, right? And it really reminds me of what I believe my higher purpose in the world is, which is exploring, getting to know the world more, and also be of service to others through language learning specifically. So whereas before I am much less curious and way more critical of anything I do in my language learning process and studies, I use dabbling as kind of like a light switch to really find some of that curiosity that is still buried deep inside, but is having a hard time coming out because I felt that my maintenance language study sessions are very monotonous, boring, etc. And again, keeping this curiosity alive helps me regain motivation so that I can go back refreshed into picking up where I left off in my maintenance languages. I also feel a lot more gratitude towards my main languages after dabbling, because I'm reminded of the fact that I would have never even wanted to dabble in multiple languages if I hadn't started with my main focus languages, really the OGs of my language learning journey. And I also just like to take a break via dabbling to serve as a reminder that language learning can be kept low pressure and fun. No matter how many times I mentally remind myself, yes, I need to keep the process fun and engaging, sometimes our words don't always align with our actions, especially when we feel like the stakes are super, super high to achieve a goal in our main focus languages. So it's really nice to have dabbling on the side as an escape from all of that. So again, learning one language at a time is totally validating, and I know that for some learners, it is way too distracting to even think about dabbling. However, dabbling indeed does have some amazing benefits that I would have personally never discovered if I never went outside of what I thought I knew. So I'm curious to know in the comments below, are you a language dabbler? And how has dabbling also benefited your journey? Thanks for watching, you guys. Please subscribe if you are interested in similar content like this, and see you next time.